Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and allies, I am pleased to see that the CyCon conference continues to bring together such a diverse group of analysts, experts, academia, and decision makers. Thank you all for taking the time to share with others your knowledge and ideas. Such an exchange is irreplaceable, because from all the fields of security and defense, cyber is probably the one that changes the fastest. And therefore, it is the one that probably benefits the most from fresh perspectives. Perspectives and ideas that help us look over the horizon, as put forward by the theme of this year's CyCon. But of course, from Estonia's perspective, there is no cyber conflict per se. There is just conflict that extends into all domains. Estonia is a small, democratic country directly bordering an authoritarian one. For Estonia, there is no alternative to the concept of whole of government national defense. National defense must include all fields of life and every member of society. Resilience, preparedness, and readiness for any crisis situation is everyone's responsibility. It goes without saying that cyber is one of the key components of our comprehensive national defense concept. All military plans and capabilities are only effective if they are supported by a credible cyber environment. Military power is not of much use if there is no functioning information and data exchange. But during our peacetime, the cyber world allows our adversaries to cheaply and covertly subvert our society. Cyber attackers are becoming more and more unpredictable and crafty. All democracies today are struggling with new ways of foreign manipulation through internet platforms, from hacking and leaking, bot farms and trolls, to false information and deep fakes. In 2023, the number of high-impact cyber incidents in Estonia increased by 25% compared to the year before. This trend is similar in many other countries. The attackers are increasingly politically motivated, and they increasingly benefit from better infrastructure and coordination. Thus, cyberspace must be secure on a daily basis. This is moreover so because our lifestyle is increasingly digital. Estonia is a digitalized society with high trust in the digital services. Almost all parts of our lives, from schools and kindergartens to cow milking machines, are connected to the internet. And that's good. That's what we want. We want everyday tasks to be easy, convenient, and fast. We want digital solutions to be the engines of our economies. We don't have a give up on that desire, even if it makes us more vulnerable. Instead, our defensive measures must modernize too. Digital innovation always has to be accompanied by similar innovation in cybersecurity. And in this sense, close cooperation between state institutions, the private sector, academia, and volunteers is irreplaceable. I hope that also today, at this very conference, we'll find ways to keep cybersecurity in sync with the developments of a digital world of the future, and maybe even a step ahead. As a former scientist, I believe in debate. New thoughts and ideas come to us when we open our minds to new perspectives and experiences of other people. Discussions with colleagues help us to test our ideas and discover connections with the ideas of others. Together, we build new knowledge. And I hope that this year's CyCon is a good venue for this synergy. Thank you very much for your attention.
And now I have the pleasure to pass the word directly to our next keynote speaker, David van Weel, who is NATO's Assistant Secretary General for Innovation, Hybrid and Cyber. Welcome on stage.
Thank you so much, and it's great to be back here, President. Great to see you again and listen to your wise words of inspiration for the conference. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, the theme of this already 16th International Conference on Cyber Conflict is Over the Horizon, beyond the edge of what is known. Just like the mystical island of Thule, the island over the horizon in the utmost distance in the north, as described by the Greek traveler Pytheas thousands of years ago. Ultima Thule became to symbolize the journey to the edge of the world, to the edge of the horizon. Now, there are several theories about the location of this Ultima Thule, but according to a legendary and much beloved Estonian writer, filmmaker, and one of your predecessors, Lennart Meri, the legendary Thule described in ancient times is Saaremaa, the largest island of Estonia. So it's very fitting in some ways that we're here today discussing the edge of the horizon and beyond. And just like our predecessors, we want to understand what lies beyond and over that horizon. A horizon that we will have to explore with optimism, idealism, and courage. And in many ways, that's nothing new to us. This year, we celebrate the 75th anniversary of the strongest, the most enduring, and the most successful military alliance in history. And it's very simple to state that in retrospect. But the foreign ministers of 12 countries from Europe and North America that signed the Washington Treaty in 1949 didn't know what was ahead, what was over the horizon. They didn't know that the Berlin airlift and the Cuban Missile Crisis and the fall of the Berlin Wall would happen, that NATO would have to intervene in 2 brutal ethnic conflicts in the Balkans, and that in 2001, after the 9/11 attacks, for the first time, NATO would invoke Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, which states that an attack on one ally is an attack on all. And that an alliance that started with 12 members would now end up with 32 members 75 years later. That Ukrainians will continue to fight for their freedom, to defend their land and their loved ones. That just days before the brutal invasion of Ukraine, President Putin and President Xi would sign an agreement of no-limits partnership. And that China will be propping up Russia's war economy, providing key capabilities like semiconductors, microelectronics, and satellite imagery, to enable Russia to build the missiles and to build the bombs that they are using to kill Ukrainians on a daily basis. But foreign ministers did know back then that we needed each other, that Europe needed America for its security, and that at the same time, North America also needed Europe, that we are stronger together. And with that optimism and courage, we have to face whatever lies beyond the horizon when we discuss events unfolding in cyberspace. Already in 2016, allies signed the Cyber Defense Pledge, and it is what is driving forward the efforts of the whole alliance in this field. NATO's Cyber Defense Pledge is a flagship process through which allies commit to strengthening and enhancing their national networks and infrastructures as a matter of priority. The pledge itself, that you can read on our website, is a high-level agreement. It includes commitments to strengthen allied cyber defenses, develop national capabilities, and properly resource this vital work. But beneath those general commitments, there is a huge amount of detailed work that goes on. And at the NATO Vilnius summit last year, allies agreed to enhance the Cyber Defense Pledge to include a minimum baseline and to start tracking cyber maturity of allies. For the first time ever, we now have a quantitative measure of allied cyber defense postures. And this gives us a baseline, a clear picture of where we are now as allies and as an alliance. The pledge also provides us with a maturity model, a pathway for allies to follow to get where they need to be. That means that they can focus their resources more efficiently, precisely where they're needed the most. And we can see where allies are doing well and match this against themes where more support is needed. The pledge is more than a technical exercise and more than a political display. We have much to do to really operationalize what we agree needs to be done. In cyberspace, as in any other domains, our alliance of 32 nations is only as strong as our weakest link. But it goes beyond the alliance. Cybersecurity is also global. So for the first time this year, allies shared the Cyber Defense Pledge questionnaire with a number of international partners, including, but not limited to, Japan, Korea, Ireland, and Australia. This is meant to propel forward the conversation of how like-minded actors must leverage their strengths, their expertise, and shared interests to defend and maintain a secure and peaceful cyberspace. So just as we work hard to make our navies, armies, and air forces compatible, capable, and make sure they have the right number of highly skilled staff, so too must our cyber defense forces. This is about how we organize our militaries. And when it comes to cyber, as with all the disruptive technologies that are over the horizon, the challenge here is that it is the private sector and not the military that will highly likely be in the driving seat. So the question is, how do we ensure in the future that the military remains a part of this picture? How do we benefit from extraordinary innovation that is happening in industry and from the vast amounts of innovation and intelligence that is collected by industry? Over the last 30 or more years, the tech industry has developed in peacetime, with a peacetime mindset. But times have changed. While we are not at war, we are in a new era of strategic competition that has the potential to quickly transform into a crisis or even a conflict. So how, if the time comes, does the military support or take the lead in such a situation? The key here is to make use of NATO as a platform for information sharing, for policy making, and for decision making. And one of the big deliverables at the Washington Summit, which is now just weeks away, will be a new NATO Cyber Center, for which negotiations are ongoing. This center will work to ensure civil-military cooperation at all times through peacetime, crisis, and conflict, recognizing and responding to what we see across the cyber threat landscape. Another way that allies are bolstering NATO's capacity at the Washington Summit to deal with malicious cyber activities below the threshold are new strategic measures to address significant malicious cyber activities and campaigns. In short, NATO's very own cyber diplomacy toolbox. The measures further broaden NATO's ability to support the full application of international law in cyberspace, as well as observance of norms of responsible state behavior during peacetime. Among other enablers, the strategic measures will reform how NATO's Cyber Defense Committee, who leads on political governance and cyber defense policy in the alliance, does its business. We want there to be a continued shift from a reactive to a proactive policy approach. This approach will better track malicious cyber actors across the alliance. It will allow allies to connect the dots and continuously update potential responses to specific threat actors. The new NATO Cyber Center and these strategic measures signal NATO's preparedness to play a more active role in international cyber diplomacy. Both are responses to Russia's war of aggression on Ukraine and China continuing to erode fundamental freedoms online. However, no matter how ambitious we are in defending cyberspace, we can never lose momentum on strengthening our resilience against cyber threats. Having strong national cyber defense postures enables us to be more proactive and to use NATO as a platform to enhance the resilience of the alliance as a whole with greater situational awareness across a trusted community. Only once we improve our cyber defenses will we be empowered to get ahead of our rivals. Not only reacting to events in cyberspace, but actively shaping cyberspace. In conclusion, let me reiterate that technological advances provide challenges, but also huge opportunities as we look towards the horizon. They are having, and they will have an impact on how we promote peace, deal with conflict, and operate in new domains. And at NATO, we're working hard to ensure that we stay ahead of that curve. We do that by working together, among our 32 members and with our partners and other international organizations. And of course, we work with the private sector to take full advantage of the latest innovation and to maintain our technological edge. Marco Polo once said, "In the unknown lies the beauty of discovery." And I think this really encapsulates well the essence and the allure of human exploration, to see what's beyond the horizon. And I really look forward to your discussions and to hearing from you how you view the future beyond the horizon. Thank you.
And thank you very much for this so far. And that is more or less an invitation for a couple of questions. If I assume there are some questions in the audience. All right. Thank you very much, Joe. Microphone is coming up.
Hi, Joe Burton, Lancaster University. Thank you for your talk. Just wondering if you could say a few more words about the cyber diplomacy toolbox that you just announced. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I don't want to reveal everything before the Washington summit. Sorry for that. We need to keep a few surprises. But what I can tell you is that we're going to make more use of the full spectrum that we have in responding to cyber threats. So what you've seen in recent years and even in recent weeks have been attribution statements, but there's more that can be done collectively in reaction or in preventing these cyber activities to happen. And we're very much combining here the work we do in the domain of cyber with what we see happening in the hybrid domain. And we're here in Estonia, where only last week buoys were removed on the River Narva by the Russian Coast Guard, just to give an example of these hybrid activities that are ongoing. Now, we will never respond in kind to these kind of attacks, but there are other ways and asymmetric ways in which we can respond. And that's what the measures are aimed towards.
Thank you very much. Another question? We have time. Well,
I must have been very clear then.
Absolutely. I mean, but please, microphone's coming up.
Thank you so much for your remarks. Tina Park from the NATO Association of Canada. I just wanted to ask you what NATO is doing with regards to the threats, cyber threats specifically from North Korea.
Yeah, well, I often say that in cyberspace we are all neighbors. So whilst NATO is a Euro-Atlantic defense organization, in cyberspace we deal with all the malicious actors that are out there. So that includes North Korea, as well as Iran, China, and Russia. So we see attacks from North Korea, and we see them on our networks, but I have to admit that most of the time these are aimed towards espionage and they're aimed towards making money, as North Korea is doing worldwide. So there hasn't been any need for a strategic response from NATO with regards to our own security.
All right. 3 times the charm, please.
Assistant Secretary General Simona Suade, Lancaster University. It's a pleasure to hear you again, sir. I'm a single-track mind girl working on defense innovation. We have met on this topic before. I'm just wondering, we have, in the past, research has revealed that cyber can, and in fact often is, a blocker or an obstacle for the adoption of other more sophisticated, more advanced digital technologies on the horizon or over the horizon. Can you speak a little bit about the thinking within your team and your own thinking about how the steps forward we're making in cyber right now are laying the path forward to accelerate adoption of AI and advanced cryptography and so on? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And this topic is very much on our agenda, and we encompass it within NATO under the umbrella of digital transformation, as a lot of private sector and government actors have been working on for the past. And This is partly about infrastructure, about having the capabilities, the right networks, the right compute power to enable, for example, the implementation of AI at scale within a defense context. But it's also about people. It's about cultures, it's about processes. And one of the things that we noticed from the Cyber Defense Pledge is that what most allies are struggling the most with is finding skilled personnel. Do we have enough and do we have the right people to actually operate an alliance that is completely digitally transformed and enabled? So that's one of the focus points, and one of the benefits of having this pledge mechanism is to find out where allies face the same challenges and then try to find best practices or come up with common solutions to tackle that theme. One other issue I will touch upon with regards to digital transformation, what the future will look like is, and I mentioned this in my speech, the role of the private sector. We really need to reevaluate how we work together with private sector actors, of whom I know many are in this room. For a lot of these big companies, defense is actually not a huge part of their daily life, but it is a very important and a crucial part. So the question is, how do we keep up with the quick pace of commercial innovation that's happening, also in the digital transformation domain, in using cloud networks, et cetera, while not being impeding upon the speed that these companies are driving, because we have to maintain our edge, and it's the companies doing that.
All right. Thank you very much. I would say that was our final question. David, thank you so much for the presentation and giving the opportunity for everyone to ask questions. Therefore,
thank you.
Big hand for you. Thank you. And now I have the pleasure to announce our final keynote. Will be delivered by Ambassador Nathaniel C. Fick. He was sworn in 2022 as the inaugural US Ambassador at Large for Cyberspace and Digital Policy. Prior to joining the State Department, Ambassador Fick was a technology executive and entrepreneur. He was CEO of the cybersecurity software company Endgame from 2012 through its acquisition by Elastic in 2019. Thereafter, he led Elastic's information security business globally. Ambassador, the floor is yours, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to be back at CyCon and grateful for the opportunity to speak with you today. Thank you to our Estonian hosts who, as always, have extended a warm welcome to the U.S. delegation here in Tallinn. And thank you, President Karis, Assistant Secretary General Van Weel. It's an honor to be with you. I guess I'll be the third person to mention the theme of this year's conference, Over the Horizon, which is notable both literally and metaphorically. Literally, Russia is only a couple hundred kilometers over the horizon to our east, where President Putin continues to wage his misbegotten and illegitimate war in Ukraine. Metaphorically, we in the West are in a decisive period of history where rapid changes in technology are coming rapidly across the horizon of time and changing foreign policy as we know it. Recognition of that change and what it portends for us all is why the United States has recently released our new international cyberspace and digital policy strategy. Launched by Secretary Blinken on the main stage at the RSA conference in San Francisco earlier this month, the strategy contains three big moves. First, it lays out an affirmative vision for the role of technology in our shared future. Second, it calls for digital solidarity. And third, it embraces an integrated approach to the full digital ecosystem. The first element of the U.S. approach to technology as articulated in the strategy, that affirmative vision, is our North Star. Digital technologies can and should be fundamentally used as a force for good. Good for individual humans, good for states, and good for the international system. Together with our allies and partners, we represent a global community of rights-respecting governments, companies, institutions, and individuals on the cutting edge of innovation, driving solutions to global challenges. Our hope, of course, is that the global internet and global technology ecosystem won't balkanize, won't fragment into blocks. but it's increasingly clear that some leaders and more authoritarian regimes disagree. Nonetheless, even in a world partly defined by different tech ecosystems, most countries don't want to be forced to choose between them. Instead, it's incumbent upon us, those of us who share a broadly values-based view of rights-respecting development, deployment, and use of technology, it's incumbent upon us to provide a better option, a better affirmative choice. It can be hard to hold on to that affirmative vision when we observe Russia use its cyber capabilities to destabilize Ukraine as part of its ongoing, unprovoked, and illegal war. It can be hard to hold on to the affirmative vision while we watch China support the reconstitution of Russia's military-industrial base. We have nothing but admiration for Ukraine as they fight in both the physical and digital world to defend themselves against an adversary that shows disdain for human rights and the rules-based international order. And Ukraine, of course, is not alone. We see Russia-based actors using malicious activity against Ukraine's supporters, including Estonia and many of us here today, to try and sow fear and discord among us. They will not succeed. Channeling the Ukrainian spirit of resilience, we must still believe in an affirmative vision grounded in our values. The test before us is whether we can harness this current era of disruption and channel it as a once-in-a-generation opportunity into greater stability and greater prosperity. I've just come from Finland, a new NATO ally and a shining example of this moment of opportunity in action. This is where digital solidarity, the second major principle of our strategy, comes in. Here within the border of the European Union, I concede, with a smile, that digital solidarity is partly, but only partly, an organizing principle to provide an alternative to digital sovereignty. Of course, states must safeguard a measure of sovereignty for their citizens. But in the digital domain, it's a seductive mirage. None of us can go it alone for long in tech. These technologies span borders intrinsically. They require scale intrinsically. And their development is so fast, such a race, that we simply must work together if we're to remain ahead together. Digital solidarity means working together toward common systems, policies, regulations, and standards across the tech ecosystem. We want to leverage shared values like freedom of expression and open and fair markets to better align policies and standards across the largest possible group. No one is de facto excluded. We've successfully done this for decades, to greater or lesser extent, and now we must do more. This leads naturally to our third principle, that of working across the full tech ecosystem. The internet is resilient precisely because its components rely on networks operating together. When the United States released its 2011 International Strategy for Cyberspace, it focused on the traditional swath of cybersecurity issues, but not on the full scope of technologies, some mature and some emerging, that we see as foundational to the global internet now in 2024. Today, we must think from cables to cloud, everything from subsea cables to wireless networks to data centers to LEO satellites, as well as the regulations and norms governing their development, deployment, and use. An innovative, rights-respecting, and secure approach across the tech stack is foundational to our shared strategic, security, economic, and foreign policy interests. In practice, digital solidarity means providing mutual support, holding bad actors accountable, building capacity, and investing in each other to work toward shared goals. Nothing generates advantage for us, large states and small states alike, as much as working together with partners and allies to build shared, innovative tech ecosystems and to confront shared threats. These aren't academic ideas. We have many recent examples of why they matter to our governments, to our companies, to our civil society organizations, and to our citizens. In the very first hours of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russia launched a cyber attack against Viasat, aimed at paralyzing Ukraine's satellite communications and with spillover effects in Europe. That same year, in 2022, we witnessed one of the most damaging peacetime cyber attacks in recent memory when the government of Iran conducted a reckless and irresponsible attack on our NATO ally Albania, destroying government data and disrupting government services to the public. Our countries have spent decades negotiating and fine-tuning at the United Nations a framework for responsible state behavior in cyberspace. Malicious activities like these, with cascading effects into critical infrastructure and civilian life, are not in keeping with that framework. They are, in fact, unacceptable. In both cases, we stood together in digital solidarity with the Ukrainian and the Albanian people, restoring systems, building capacity, and increasing the costs of future attacks. And we must do more. The creation of the Tallinn mechanism last year is one example, an excellent example, of what doing more might look like. The mechanism is intended to streamline, accelerate, and prioritize support for Ukraine's immediate technology needs and its long-term economic recovery. This year, Tallinn mechanism members have earmarked many millions of dollars for Ukrainian cybersecurity. In the process, we're creating innovative ways to incorporate private sector support into the mechanism. The Tallinn mechanism, which owes its existence to visionary leadership here in Estonia and also in Poland, in addition to in Ukraine, demonstrates the power of digital solidarity in the face of complex challenges. Solidarity requires will, of course, but it also requires capacity and resources. Part of solidarity means being the partner of choice for countries hoping to use trusted technology to achieve their economic and development goals, underpinned by fundamental respect for human rights. The US State Department's new Cyberspace, Digital Connectivity, and Related Technologies Fund will support strategically important technology-related foreign assistance programs, adding a crucial tool to our kit for building strong, resilient, and secure partners. Some of that work will be done here in Europe. Some will be done in other parts of the world, hand in hand with European partners. We also, of course, look forward to the NATO summit in Washington in July and to working with NATO allies to continue to strengthen the alliance's work in cybersecurity, in innovative technologies, and more broadly, in ensuring that the greatest defensive alliance in history remains fit for purpose, regardless of what comes from over the horizon. So that's what the United States promises to our friends around the world, that in us, you will find a partner who will take seriously the duty to advance an affirmative, inclusive, attractive vision for the future of tech, who will implement that vision in broad solidarity with rights-respecting partners from all quarters of the world. Together, we will work to enhance connectivity, uphold human rights online, sustain innovation, and break down barriers to cooperation. Thank you again for the opportunity to be with you today. I look forward to continuing the conversation here at CyCon as we build this future together.